Rain hammers the diner's tin roof, mingling with the low whir of the ancient overhead fan. Inside, Millie's is empty, save for one booth by the window, where a chipped coffee cup sits half-drunk. A lipstick stain mars its rim, and the chair is still angled as if someone rose in haste, leaving words unspoken. Behind the counter, Maggie leans against the grease-spattered tiles, clutching a sodden slip of paper. Her fingers are dark with engine oil and coffee stains. Her eyes are fixed, unblinking. A second waitress quietly sets a damp rag beside her. Silence stretches until, at last, the colleague whispers, "Was it him?" Maggie says nothing, fingers tightening around the note as if it might vanish. A gentle jingle at the door cuts through the hush. Someone has arrived. Not a customer. Not a passerby. Something more. And in that heartbeat, the world tilts. A small roadside diner is about to change everything. In the hush before daylight breaks over the rolling fields of South Carolina, Millie's Diner sits at the side of Highway 52 like a beacon for the weary. Its formica counter, etched by decades of knives and coffee cups, stretches beneath a row of low-hung lamps whose glass shades glow dully against the early morning gloom. Outside, the rain falls in restless sheets, sliding rivulets down the diner's windows, blurring the neon sign so that diner seems to flicker on and off in the gray half-light. Inside, the warmth of the grill's heat contrasts sharply with the chill in Maggie's bones. She moves behind the counter with a practiced economy of motion, pouring coffee, clearing mugs, straightening salt and pepper shakers, while the fans overhead wheeze in protest against the damp air. At 22, she carries herself with a quiet stoicism, lean shoulders squared, back straight. Her apron, once crisp and white, has grown threadbare and stained. The cloth hangs heavily at her waist, bearing the deep, dark calluses of long shifts and the smeared circles of greasy pans. Maggie's pale blue eyes, shadowed by fatigue, flick up only once to the clock on the wall. 5:47 a.m. Her own daughter's face, bright, coiled hair escaping its ribbons, fleetingly appears behind her eyelids. The child, deaf since the fever took her hearing at 5, sleeps in their tiny trailer down the road. Each morning, Maggie wonders if there will be enough to bring her to the specialist. She tucks the thought away and returns to her rhythm. The diner is nearly empty. One lonely logger nursing a mug of black coffee by the window, a pair of traveling salesmen poring over route maps, and a young trucker who sleeps with one elbow on the counter. Their conversations are low. The sizzle of bacon and eggs punctuates the hush. From an old AM radio mounted behind the grill comes a scratchy waltz, then the familiar notes of "Only the Strong Survive." Maggie pauses, spoon suspended over a bowl of batter she's flipping. She never was an Elvis fan. Her late husband used to joke that Elvis sang too softly, but even she admires the soulful grit of this old tune. She turns away from the radio just as the bell above the front door gives a hesitant ring, sharp, clear in the quiet dawn. Maggie doesn't look up at first, assuming it's more locals seeking refuge from the rain. Only when the bell sounds again, insistently, does she lift her gaze. A man stands there, water streaming down the wide shoulders of a long leather coat. Rain beads on the bill of his fedora, trickling onto the floor in tiny rivulets. He is tall, solidly built, though his posture is casual, as if he belongs behind the counter rather than in front of it. He does not approach the register. His eyes meet Maggie's with a steady calm that makes her chest tighten for reasons she cannot at once name. He moves forward with smooth assurance, as if he's stepped out of the morning fog into his own living room. His boots are scuffed, his jeans faded, and he carries neither guitar nor entourage. Nothing to mark him as anyone extraordinary except the quiet gravity he radiates. When he reaches an empty stool at the far end of the counter, he settles onto it without ceremony and glances at the menu board in a way that makes it clear he intends to order, but not from its listings. For a long-held breath, Maggie stands frozen between the spatulas and coffee urns. The trucker blinks awake. The salesmen shift their paper maps. The logger pushes back from the window and watches through the rain-speckled glass. Everyone recognizes the hush that falls when someone important enters. Not a fanfare, but a collective intake of breath, a momentary stillness. Maggie finds her voice at last. "Good morning," she says softly, wiping her hands on her apron. "What can I get for you?" He doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he lifts the collar of his coat and brushes water from his lapel. Then, in that low, unhurried drawl, he says, "Coffee. Black. And whatever's fresh from the grill." She nods and moves to pour his cup. The diner settles back into motion. She sets a steaming mug before him, places a steaming plate of bacon and eggs with silent precision. Her fingers brush the edge of the plate for just a moment too long, and she notices that his eyes follow the movement. Eyes that have seen stadiums full of screaming fans, theaters bright with spotlights, but now are simply attentive. She steps back. Before she can turn away, he reaches to the table side and pulls out a small folded slip of paper. Its corner damp from the rain. He slides it toward her. "You keep the change," he says, voice gentle but firm. Then he stands, nods once, and walks out into the rain with the same quiet assurance. Maggie unfolds the slip as she watches him go, his silhouette blurred by the downpour. Her hand trembles, and the note, smudged from dampness, reads, "You are stronger than you believe, and your daughter will have her chance. E.P." Her breath catches. The radio, at that moment, skips. Elvis's voice, rich and reassuring, fills the room. Maggie's fingers close around the stained paper. Tears gather behind her eyes. No sobs, but the world shudders through her shoulders. She lowers her head, lets the tears fall, and for the first time in a long while, she doesn't wipe them away. Outside, the rain continues its steady drum, as if applauding her silent, profound release. Rain pattered against the diner's windows in restless sheets, refracting the soft neon glow of the sign outside into trembling patterns on the linoleum floor. Inside, the hush that had followed Elvis Presley's departure lingered like a presence. Truckers and travelers glanced at one another, uncertain whether to speak, as though they feared to disturb something sacred. Maggie stood behind the counter, her apron cold and damp against her skin, the envelope clutched in her hand as if it might vanish at a breath. With deliberate slowness, she unfolded the note. The paper, thin and creased, bore a few lines of handwriting that, now preserved forever in her memory, seemed to pulse with warmth. "Your silence carries more strength than most men's speeches. Your little girl, she'll get her second chance. You'll never work a double shift again. Keep the envelope. Don't thank me." E.P. Maggie's finger trembled as it traced the initials. The initials. 1,000 questions tumbled in her mind before one simple truth settled. That was Elvis Presley's handwriting. The man who'd just sat in her diner, incognito, unguarded, and utterly genuine, had reached across ranks she'd never thought to cross and changed the course of her life. The envelope, soaked through at one corner, crackled as she pried it open. Her breath caught at the sight of the check inside. $38,000. The exact sum she'd calculated in sleepless hours to cover her daughter's cochlear implant surgery and the months of therapy that would follow. The very price of hope. A sudden whisper broke the silence. Did you see who that was?" Ruby, the night shift waitress, hovered behind the counter, leaning closer than protocol allowed. Her bright eyes were wide beneath streaks of tired mascara. Maggie didn't look up. Her throat felt tight, as if the words might not emerge. Maggie swallowed, unsteady. "It's his handwriting. Elvis's. He—" Ruby's shoulders jerked. "You're kidding. You saw him." Maggie's voice was so low as to be nearly inaudible. "He sat there, he paid, he wrote the note." Ruby reached out, steadying Maggie's arm. "You have to believe me," Maggie said. I thought maybe it was someone messing with me. I never believed—" She broke off as the door jingled again. A lone customer, a farmhand, dirt under his fingernails, wide-brimmed hat soaked, entered and shook off his coat on the rack. He paused, surveying the scene. The check lay open before Maggie, its edges curling from damp. "Everything all right?" he asked, concern quickening his drawl. Ruby forced a smile. "Just a bit of good news." The farmhand nodded and took his seat by the window. Maggie closed the envelope, lifted the check, and tucked both into the pocket of her apron. Every heartbeat thudded like a drum. Disbelief, gratitude, fear of publicity. She knew what would follow if word got out. Shortly after, the logger by the grill approached. He was a stocky man with a grizzled beard and arms like hickory. "I couldn't help overhearing," he said quietly. "I used to see him round here years ago when he'd slip in on his own. If that was Elvis, well, I ain't never seen anything like it." A single nod from Maggie was all he needed. He returned to his coffee, and the diner's rhythm resumed. Order slips, the hiss of the grill, the tinny, soft focus of the radio. Yet beneath it all lay a new undercurrent, a current of awe and reverence that would not be easily shaken. That evening, Maggie closed up later than usual. She walked through the back door into the soft September mist, the envelope heavy in her pocket, the memories of her husband's death, the endless hospital visits for her daughter, the cramped trailer they called home. They all pressed in upon her. But now there was a path forward. She stopped beneath a lone street lamp, the silver pool of light scarce defense against the damp. Maggie drew out the envelope. Her finger brushed the check's numbers, each digit a promise of tomorrow's possibility. But she felt an urgent need to share this miracle before the world could swallow it in headlines and gossip. The church on Maple Avenue, a modest brick building where she had once taken her daughter in search of solace, stood silent at the corner. Its doors were closed, but the small memorial board near the entryway, papers announcing choir rehearsals, Bible study schedules, was still visible. Maggie slipped the check and note between two flyers advertising the youth choir's auditions. There, any passing soul could find them, a gift extended to the community, anonymous and pure. Then she drew back and laid a trembling hand atop the spot. "Use this where it's needed," she whispered, half to the world, half to herself. "No thanks required." She turned and walked away, her shoulders lighter than they had been in years. In the days that followed, rumors of the anonymous benefactor spread quietly through Nashville's back roads. At the Children's Hospital, staff found a check covering not only her daughter's surgery, but dozens of other cases. The memory of a single mother's struggle multiplied across the ward. Volunteers whispered of a mysterious EP whose generosity erased waiting lists. Back at Millie's diner, Maggie served coffee with a new steadiness. She never spoke of Elvis Presley's visit, and no reporter ever knocked on her door. Yet sometimes, from the corner of her eye, she thought she saw a black Cadillac slip by in the rain, its headlights a brief promise before vanishing into the night. At home, her daughter, a small, determined girl with eyes brighter than sunlight, threw herself into therapy with a grin that made Maggie's heart ache with joy. Each day, the girl grasped a little more sound, the hum of the fridge, the laughter of other children, and eventually, the gentle, wounded melody of her mother's whispered lullabies. Maggie never forgot the fragile envelope, the silent words scrawled on its edge, or the man who sat without fanfare in her diner and altered their fate. In that quiet, rain-soaked moment, she had learned that kindness need not blast from a stage to be heard, nor require applause to echo. Sometimes, it speaks in a whisper that outlasts even the loudest storm. The morning after the rain-streaked night, Millie's diner awoke under a slate-gray sky as Maggie slipped through the back door before dawn. The check and its urgent promise lay folded in her apron pocket like a secret talisman. She inhaled the damp air, tasting coffee mixed with pavement mist, and steeled herself. Today, she would do exactly what the mysterious benefactor instructed. She would give back. Inside the church hall on Maple Avenue, its hardwood floors worn smooth by decades of Sunday shoes, Maggie found the hospital chaplain's office. The door was ajar. The old man inside was sorting bulletins for the upcoming food pantry drive. He glanced up with warm, sleepy eyes that betrayed his own long vigil of caring. "Good morning, Maggie," he greeted. "Busy day?" Maggie cleared her throat. She steadied her hands on the envelope. I left something here last night." She pressed it into his palm. "It's meant for the children's ward. Use it where they need it most." The chaplain's fingers traced the name on the check, Elvis Presley's neat scrawl, and his eyebrows rose. This is more than we expected." He closed the envelope with tender reverence. "Thank you. I promise to see that every cent brings healing." Maggie nodded and slipped away before the chaplain could ask questions. In her chest, her heart fluttered like a sparrow learning flight. It had not been easy to trust that the money would be used as she intended, yet already she felt a lightness that no shift behind the diner counter could ever have granted. Back at Millie's by mid-morning, the usual rhythm resumed. The sizzle of bacon on the griddle, the scratch of order tickets, the low hum of truck engines idling outside. But beneath that familiar cadence, a new undercurrent ran, one of whispered hope. Patrons who had once taken coffee grits with stoic reserve now paused to offer Maggie gentle smiles. The diner had become, if only in their eyes, a place where miracles could begin. A week passed, then another. Maggie's daughter, little Sarah, returned to school, her new cochlear implant opening a world she had only glimpsed in dreams. Sarah raced home each afternoon, breathless with excitement, to recount every squeak of the schoolyard swing, every whisper of her teacher's instructions. Maggie would cradle her close, marveling at the way the child's face lit up with each newly heard sound. Yet Maggie could not rest on gratitude alone. She remembered the second part of the silent benefactor's instruction: to expand the gift beyond her own family. The diner, for all its warmth, did not feel the right place for children to let their voices soar. She envisioned a small music workshop, somewhere local kids, especially those who struggled with hearing or speech, could learn to sing and play without charge. A refuge where broken confidence could be mended by melody. That idea led her to Mr. Bradley, the retired carpenter who lived down the road. In the encroaching dusk one evening, Maggie crept behind the diner to the shed where Mr. Bradley kept spare lumber. She found him sanding the leg of an old rocking chair. "Mr. Bradley," she began, voice low but urgent, "I need your help." By candle-lamp in the barn, she poured out her plan. A little stage in the back room of the diner, benches for families, donated instruments, and free lessons. She would pay for tools. He would help build risers and acoustic panels. The reality of her request hung between them like reverent hush. He studied her for a long moment, then a slow, approving nod. "I'll do it," he said, "for the girl who brightens her mama's world." While they worked in clandestine union, Maggie sanding old benches by evening light, Mr. Bradley cutting boards by day, the outside news turned. The local newspaper ran a quiet piece about the anonymous donation that had cleared the hospital's pediatric debt. Gossip swirled. Was it Elvis Presley? Why now? Some speculated he was raising his profile. Others whispered about heartache in his own life. The article caught the ear of Penny Dixon, a DJ at a small community radio station. Penny was known for unplugged segments highlighting homegrown talent. One afternoon, she dropped by the diner, clanging her heels against the linoleum. "Hi, Maggie," Penny greeted, flashing a transistor radio clipped to her belt. "I heard about the gift to the kids' ward. That was incredible." Maggie blinked. "It wasn't me," she murmured. "I just passed it on." Penny's gaze sharpened, curious. "If you're looking to spotlight something good, kids' music, second chances, I'd love to help. Maybe a broadcast of your workshop when it's ready?" Maggie hesitated. The notion of publicity made her stomach twist. But then she recalled the chaplain's words. "Don't thank me." She realized this was not about personal recognition, but about sustaining the gift's reach. "Okay," she said quietly. "When we're set up, I'll call you." Her voice held a fragile hope. Weeks later, the workshop opened with little fanfare. A handful of wooden stools, a child-sized keyboard, a battered acoustic guitar, and a battered heart in Maggie's chest as she watched her first student, 6-year-old Amelia, born deaf in one ear, strike her inaugural notes. Amelia's mother wept quietly in the back row as the DJ's microphone picked up the tentative melody and broadcast it live. "First Steps," Penny dubbed it. In the diner kitchen, Maggie watched the radio perched on a high shelf. Amelia's wavering tune drifted through the speakers, crisp as morning air. The radio crackled, then a voice. "That was real. That was raw. And that was healing." Maggie closed her eyes, letting the refrain wash over her. She felt tears blur her vision, but they were not tears of sorrow. She discovered in her bones that this space of shared music was itself a miracle. Elvis's gesture, given and forgotten, blossomed into ripples far beyond her solitary corner. The workshop grew. Volunteer teachers arrived, children from nearby towns traveled to join, and a banner was painted above the doorway. "Voices rise here." Maggie, no longer merely a waitress, moved through the music hall with gentle patience, her hands once rough from coffee cups, now guiding piano keys for trembling newcomers. She remembered, with gratitude, that she had once been the silent one, muffling pain, hiding hope. Now she stood amid laughter and song, the quiet strength gifted by a stranger's kindness transformed into a chorus of possibility. And though Elvis Presley vanishing into the night remained a whispered legend, his presence lived in every note the children played, every voice they found. Maggie understood at last. True generosity does not demand acknowledgement. It quietly kindles the flame for many to share. A crisp autumn wind swept low across the parking lot behind Millie's diner, whispering through the tall grass that bordered the cracked asphalt. Inside, the teenage volunteers had just finished strumming a rickety dobro and tuning a second-hand keyboard, while the younger children gathered on mismatched stools for their free lesson. Maggie moved through the room with calm authority, her voice low and steady as she guided a shy boy through his first choral scales. The workshop she once barely dared to dream of now thrived in the glow of overhead fluorescence. By mid-afternoon, the final car pulled away, and the children's laughter faded. Twig-thin rays of late sun sifted through blinds, making slanted bands of light on the well-worn linoleum. Maggie flipped a switch on the dusty cassette deck perched above the small stage. The machinery whirred, and then, through a raw, intimate recording, she heard a voice she had never expected to hear again. When shadows fall and voices wane, remember this: you never walk alone. EP. It was Elvis Presley's voice, soft but unwavering, singing, "You'll Never Walk Alone." The tape crackled at first, then carried his tune with simple guitar accompaniment. Maggie's breath caught. Every eye in the room, hers, the children's, tilted upward toward the speaker. For a long moment, no one moved. In that hush, the years of strain pooled in Maggie's chest, endless shifts, past grief, the quiet desperation of keeping secret the cost of her daughter's care. Yet here was a stranger's gift, laid bare in song, proof that kindness could transcend fame, that a hidden angel had watched her struggle and chosen to act without expectation of recognition. The music warmed the walls, then filled them entirely, until it felt as though the diner's peeling wallpaper and scuffed stools glowed from within. Maggie squeezed her daughter's hand, 6-year-old Sarah, whose implant now caught each joyful note, and managed a steady voice. "Let's sing together, honey." Softly, in unison, they lifted their heads. First Sarah's bright, off-key melody, then Maggie's richer tone weaving beneath. Caught in the tape's embrace, they sang, "Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown." As the last chord faded, a gentle hush reigned. Sarah's eyes glistened with something like wonder. Maggie felt tears slip free at last, tears not of sorrow, but of release. She closed her eyes, letting the unspoken gratitude pour through her. That evening, under the diner's neon sign, a lone figure paused by the window. It was Presley's old road manager, a silent witness to the legend's quiet missions across the South. He tapped lightly on the glass before retreating into the night. Inside, Maggie noticed the reflection of a tall silhouette in her peripheral vision, but when she turned, the booth was empty. She smiled, certain that some angels wore leather jackets and rode into storms without a backward glance. Word of the tape spread in hushed tones, a lost Elvis demo delivered to a roadside diner. National magazines ran small features, and DJs debated its provenance. But Maggie never spoke her name. Instead, she let the framed check stub, blotched with raindrops, hang beside the cassette deck, its initials EP the only clue. Visitors would pause, curious, read the note silently, then nod as though understanding something profound. The workshop flourished. Children who once whispered in isolation now proclaimed their songs across the small stage. Neighbors offered broken instruments, retired teachers volunteered their time. One winter evening, a string quartet from Fisk University donated their services for a holiday recital. The diner's back room brimmed with melody, warmth, and the quiet hum of possibility. Months later, as snow dusted the diner's rooftop like powdered sugar, Maggie sat alone at her favorite booth. Outside, headlights traced arcs of white across slush. She unwrapped an envelope, this one bearing no name, and found 2 tickets to Graceland, stamped for spring. Folded inside was a single line in Presley's elegant hand. "Come hear this song again, live, with all the truth you taught me." EP Sarah bounded across the table, breathless. Maggie's heart swelled, but she kept her composure. She reached out, smoothing the girl's hair. "Seems we've got an invitation." As the two of them gathered their coats and stepped into the night, the neon sign glowed behind them, steady as a beacon. Millie's Diner. And somewhere beyond the hush of falling snow, a gentle voice reminded them both of a promise kept, that no one ever must walk alone.